Hey, welcome back. It's Terry from Everything Homestead. Today I'm going to show you my mechanics pit. It's probably something that 99.9% of you don't have in your shop or garage, but after I show you what I have here, I'm guessing that about 99% of you probably wish you had. Or if you're going to be building one of your own buildings in the near future, maybe you can incorporate something like this in your plans. First, let me explain how we came to coming up with this idea of a mechanics pit in our garage here. When my wife and I first bought this property, there was nothing on this property. It was completely blank other than trees and a couple open fields. So we had a driveway installed and we brought in a mobile home, and that was our place where we lived. We had utilities all installed, obviously. And so the next project that we had to do was come up with a garage. That didn't happen overnight. We weren't exactly wealthy by any stretch of the imagination, so we had to do things in stages. And so we made some plans on what kind of building for a garage we needed, the size, the height, and the width, and all that stuff, what we wanted to store in there and stuff like that, and kind of decided to make it a garage slash workshop. And so we started making plans for that. Well, while we're making those plans over almost a year's time or so, a few thunderstorms came by. And for those of you who've ever lived in a mobile home, you might know that it's kind of unsettling to be in a mobile home when a thunderstorm rolls by. If you're sitting in your mobile home and the gust of wind comes up and your whole home is going like this when you're in it, you really don't want to be there. So we thought we need a storm shelter of some type. And we thought, well, how about a mechanics pit? We can use that as a storm shelter, kind of a dual purpose thing. So we went with that idea. After struggling to find a contractor that understood what in the world a mechanics pit was, we finally found a cement contractor who could have the excavation done and pour the walls needed to make this happen. And so I like to work on my own cars, obviously, or otherwise you probably wouldn't have done this. But it works great for changing oil, working on anything underneath the vehicle. It could be, exhaust work or anything under the motor, some suspension work possibly. I've changed gas tanks out before in vehicles in this thing, all sorts of things you can do. But the only thing you can't do is work on wheels, whether it be changing tires, just doesn't do any good for that. Working on brakes, hub assemblies or stuff like that. But that's just the way it goes. Because one of the other options you could have done if you didn't have a mechanics pit is you could put a car lift in. And I did think about doing that, aside from having a storm shelter, but you put a lift in, you also need to consider that you need a lot taller ceilings. So right now in here, I have 8-foot ceilings. If you put a lift in, you probably need at least 16-foot ceilings just to accommodate for the height factor with lifting a vehicle in the air. And back then, with the cost of lumber in consideration for the difference in the height of the building, it was actually cheaper at the time to have a cement contractor put this in. I hired a welder who welded up some metal grates to cover up this mechanics pit. It just consists of some 2-foot sections, and each section is approximately 2 feet. And side to side, it's about 40 inches, and end to end, 14 feet. And it goes down about 5.5 feet. And I'll show you in a little bit. We'll go down inside there. I made it 5.5 feet, so anyone that's about my height or around 6 foot tall could comfortably stand in there and not hit your head on things when you're working underneath the vehicle. It's just about right. You just reach up and work on everything's right about there. And if you're like 6'4", 6'5", you're going to be hitting your head or having to duck a lot, but I don't care because I built it for me. And so if you're going to make your own, just make it to fit you. If you're a short person, don't make it so deep, and so on. So let me get this uncovered on the far end. I've got a ladder that gets me down in there. I'll take you down in there, show you around, and in a little bit, I'm going to bring in a vehicle. So when I bring in the vehicle, these steel grates are strong enough, supposedly, that you can drive on them, although I don't recommend it just for safety's sake, just in case. But they should be strong enough to drive on, so that should be not a problem. Worry about driving on and then dropping your vehicle down in there. But being 40 inches wide, the car should straddle it pretty easily. The grates are probably 40, 45 pounds a piece, and it's heavy enough that little kids probably won't be able to lift it up and fall in. So that was something I wanted to take in consideration too. You can buy the factory grates that have the roller sections in them. That's pretty expensive compared to what this was. And so, I mean, if you have the money, that's a good option too. But let me show you inside this thing. Down on the far end of this thing, I just take this last grate, lift it up, pull it to the side, and set it off to the side. And then down inside of here, I just have a 6-foot ladder, 6-foot step ladder. Just had it sitting in here, so I'm just gonna pull it up a little higher, and that's where we can get down into this thing. So here we are, home sweet home down in here, and a little bit of an echo. Solid cement walls on both sides, solid cement floor, and I do have a drain in the bottom here so it doesn't become a swimming pool, just in case of a flood of some types to come through. A lot of times it's just water dripping off of a vehicle, snow and whatnot dripping off of a vehicle. It's just a way for the stuff to drain out. So what I do is, I can't quite stand up here because I got this grate. What I do is I just lift it up, and then I can just slide it back on itself, change oil, whatever I got to do. And it works out pretty slick that way. Here we are looking back the other direction. You can see I've got the barrel I use to catch the oil when I change oil. That works out really nice. It's on casters. I can roll it wherever I need it. That thing extends up and down, keeps the messes under control. There is the floor drain I was telling you about. I got some floor dry on here because I did spill some oil. That stuff works great, keeps you from tracking it around the building. But this is what the inside looks like, and from the bottom side, that. And using this as a storm shelter, I mean, you feel really secured out in this thing. Not much is going to get you. When it comes to working underneath a vehicle, safety is the biggest thing. A lot of people have car ramps you can drive up on. You've all probably seen what I'm talking about. The car ramps, you can drive up on them, but you got to be careful with them sometimes. They can only handle so much weight as well. They're built for cars typically. Sometimes big pickup trucks get on there, it's a little bit too much weight. They can start to give out. You've got to be safe no matter what you use. Some people just use a jack. They'll jack up their vehicle and get some jack stands. That's actually a pretty safe way to go about things, but it can be a little bit of a pain in the butt. You got something like this, you don't have to mess with any of that. And the car lifts are pretty safe right now. Nowadays, they have safety things in place to keep the car lifts from having a catastrophic failure. But just as a side note, I did have a high school teacher one time, and he ended up leaving the teaching profession, and he went on to be an auto mechanic. And one day, the lift he was under gave out, and that was the end of him. It's a really sad situation, and it's one thing to consider. I know the new ones are pretty safe. They got safety things in place to keep that from happening, but especially if you go out and buy an old one, you really got to think about, how safe is this thing? Where if you have something like this, although you really can't do some work on wheels and stuff like that in cars, this is really safe. And these walls are not going to collapse on you as long as you make them thick enough. And these are 8-inch walls here. And it's completely safe, nothing to worry about for safety concern. All right, so I pulled in my wife's car. Gonna bring it in for an oil change. Let's go down in and take a little look. Light on here, you can see I've got the oil barrel ready to go. Catch the oil once I pull the plug, but you can see down here, easy access. I just slid these grates like it's shuffling a deck of cards, just slide them on back on each other. You can get up here, you can see in there well, it's kind of dark in there. Let me come over here. You can get a good look in there and see what's going on with the the axle boots, you can see the rotor assembly, stuff like that. You can check, see if there's any leaks. Take the light with me here. You can check your exhaust. All sorts of things you can do from underneath here. Looking really good. I've been using this whole thing for almost 30 years now. It's working great. I don't know how many oil changes I've done. I've even had some friends come over and they changed their oil, and I just let them have use of it if they want, and they love it. It's a lot cheaper if you have to go to town and get this done. It can cost up from $60 on up, depending on the vehicle and oil you use. Way cheaper to do it yourself, but comes in handy for a lot of reasons. Thanks for watching.